Izuku Midoriya was born in a world where superpowers known as quirks were everything to society. Frankly, the normal jobs like a doctor, a lawyer, and so on were not sought after. Most children grew up and wanted to be a hero. But those who were born without a quirk were kind of underestimated. But when I say kind of, I mean majorly. Because when you're born with a quirk, you are ostracized, you are thrown away like garbage, and you are doubted from the very day you step on that earth. Now with Izuku, it's far, far different because his mother is someone that he cherishes and loves so much, but soon she would realize that her son was without a quirk. The doctor, or the quirk doctor, would begin to say that it seems that Izuku was not born with what is needed to actually have a said quirk, but also explains that the kid can do some honorable jobs, be a police officer, be a fireman, and the mother, Inko Midoriya, would then say that the man should shut up now because she doesn't want to hear another peep. They then leave and Inko Midoriya is completely silent all the way on the drive home. But it seems as if she's not done just yet to actually get her son a quirk. It sounds odd and it sounds weird, but it's as if Inko has an obsession with Izuku having a quirk. And Izuku doesn't even know what's going on, but all he knows is that his mother tells him that she's going to make sure that he gets a quirk. They continue to go through different trials and different actual experimental events to actually somehow get Izuku a quirk. Yes, there are experimental trials to get people quirks, but none of them have worked. Izuku continues to go through these, and it seems that his mother continues to actually get a little bit more frustrated by every single trial that doesn't work. It seems she's going a little bit cuckoo. It's a scary thing because she continues to freak out so much that even at her own job, she begins to have kind of these spurts of rage and so on. These spurts of rage and anger and stuff like that. And she works with a lot of chemical elements and all of these crazy things that can be massively dangerous. And after years and years of experimenting, trying to get Izuku a quirk, nothing has worked. Actually, Izuku has dealt with quite a few issues health-wise and even mentally-wise because of these experiments. Luckily, he hasn't gone insane or anything like that, or he hasn't gotten like terminally ill, but he's definitely not in the best spot in the world. On top of that, he continues to get bullied day in and day out by his so-called best friend Bakugo, or who he calls Kacchan, and he continues to just go through hell. It seems that he goes home and his mother puts him through experiment after experiment, trying to get him a quirk that he feels he kind of doesn't need now. He doesn't want it if it's going to cost him so much. Then he goes to school and gets bullied for not having that quirk. He continues to realize that this society is just messed up. This is so mean and horrible. I mean, this is something he cannot control. This is something that he can't even deal with himself. There's no way around the idea that he wasn't born without the ability to have a quirk. So what is he supposed to do? And one day, he kind of tells his mother that he's done with these experiments and he's done trying to please her to have a quirk, or for him to have a quirk, and she snaps on him, yelling at him, saying that he's ungrateful and getting extremely mad at Izuku. So much so that she lets it slip that she had a child for the sole reason of him having a strong quirk, actually paying a lot of money to his so-called father that is now overseas. She would then, out of anger, explain that his father must have been useless, and just because he had a strong quirk doesn't mean she's going to get a kid with a strong quirk as well. She would then cuss at him over and over again, saying that it is absolute BS that this has happened, and then would storm off. Izuku would feel like this is extremely bad. Like, he would feel as if something bad is going to happen, but then he would shake his head thinking there's no way his own mother would do anything bad to him. Well, until he realizes he's extremely wrong. Izuku was around the age of 12 by now, and he would wake up in a cold sweat, thinking that someone's around, but there's nobody there. Until out of nowhere, a bag would go over his head and he would be knocked out and dragged off to a different place. He could feel his body singeing and shaking as if stuff has been injected into his body after he woke up. Then he would get a look at it and see that there are multiple tubes in his arms. Yes, tubes in his arms. He would then scream, asking for help. But then he would look up as the shutters on the roof would begin to open, as if something is going to happen. But there's something on top right above the shutters. It seems as if there's some sort of a lightning rod. He doesn't know what the hell is going on, but he screams out for help once again. His mother would walk in as she is wheeling in a ton of chemicals as if she's going to pump it through his body. She would then say that it's not time for him to wake up just yet and that he should go to sleep now. And as she says that, the thunderstorm begins to roll in on Japan. Everybody would then begin to kind of run off into their homes. You can hear them in the distance, kids running away, parents calling them in, and so on. But this is something else. It's as if this right here is his last sense of actual normality. The kids, the parents, all of them screaming on the outside, telling kids to come in, and it's time to basically stop playing outside because of the rain and the thunder. But his mother stands there with chemicals in her hands, ready to pump them more, or at least pump more chemicals through Izuku's veins. She would implement them through the tubes that are already injected in Izuku, and Izuku's shivers and all of this sickness seems to kind of rush back as his veins are pumped filled of these horrible seeming like elements and chemicals that are affecting him massively. She says that now he'll be able to gain a quirk, and he'll be able to gain a quirk basically more powerful than anyone else. But before she could even finish her sentence, the last thing she wanted actually occurs, because the lightning would strike before she can even get out of the room, and when the lightning rod catches it, it sparks into the room, levitating all of the liquids that are within the glasses, within the pints, and all of the things you could think of begin to raise up, and the lightning strikes down on Izuku, but would then transfer off to his mother as well, instantly killing her, zapping her and paralyzing her, and then killing her on the spot. Izuku would scream in pain as his body would shake relentlessly, but it begins to shake so fast that all he looks like is a blur. That's until the entire room sparks up in light, and it seems as if the entire building combusts into nothingness. It's completely flat, and you can hear the screams of many people outside and also in the other buildings coming out to see what just happened. They come out to see just rubble, and there's one person underneath the rubble that is currently vibrating and then stopping, and vibrating and then stopping over and over and over again. And then eventually people would come, like heroes, we're talking firefighters, policemen, all of them would come all the way over to see one actual spot completely electrocuted and fried, as if there was a body there, but no longer there at all, as if it was just shattered and electrocuted to dust itself. And then they walk over to the rocks, seeing that the rocks are kind of shaking, but shaking weirdly, as if they're vibrating all at the same frequency and speed, and it's such an odd thing, as if there's a giant being underneath that rubble. They clear the rubble of the shaking rocks and eventually see a boy. This one boy, as he's sparking over and over again, lightning tracing all around him, and eventually they grab him, take him, put him in an ambulance, and ship him off to the nearest hospital to hopefully get him help. But soon Izuku would awake, and when he wakes up, days, maybe even weeks, maybe even months later, he would see that nobody's there. A nice nurse lady would walk in and be completely shocked, calling for the doctors, as they would run in and begin to tell Izuku that he's been out for at least 8 months. They're all, well, he's obviously shocked to hear this, asking what happened, what occurred, and frankly, he can't remember a thing. Not at all. They decide that he's just a boy, that they don't want to tell him exactly what happened, at least to a large extent. But the issue is, who's to say that Izuku won't eventually remember what happened, what his mother did to him? But there are specs and parts that Izuku does remember. He remembers the abuse. He remembers the struggle, but now he doesn't remember that final gambit that occurred, the lightning striking down, zapping him, and obliterating his mother. No, he doesn't remember any of that. But he does remember the abuse. But he wakes up in a hospital bed, and the people that are in front of him are telling him that unfortunately his mother has been killed, and that he was found in rubble, and so on. This would jolt his memory a little bit, remembering the lightning that hit him, but nothing else. He begins to feel the vibrations in his body once again, and the doctors would ask what his quirk is, and he would say that he has none. But the doctors begin to tell him that he was violently shaking when he was asleep, and the shaking looked like he was shaking at a speed that many of them couldn't really register even through their own eyes. It was just a blur. And they assumed that maybe he awakened some sort of speed quirk. Maybe he awakened some sort of extreme movement or fast vibration quirk. They're not sure. That those tests and all the tests they've done show up literally nothing, but they don't 100% know, but it's obvious by the eye that they can tell that something did occur. He is slightly happy about this. I mean, he got a quirk, he got what he wanted. Maybe he can now be a hero, but how is he going to train this thing? He has no clue, but the motivation is at an all-time high for Izuku Midoriya, because guess what? He's lost everything. He's going to be thrown into an orphanage, thrown into a foster home, and so on, and he's going to have to try to make his way out through being a hero. He's not sure how he's going to do it, but he's going to make sure that he could somehow do it. On top of that, he has stacks of medical bills. Bills that were piled up, and frankly, a lot of them were kind of paid off by an anonymous wealthy person, but at the same time, I mean, not all of them were fully, completely, and utterly paid off. Well, that's until someone walks in that he actually doesn't even know who it is. When the person would walk in, it would actually be a short little mouse-like creature, maybe a rat of some sorts, but it was actually Principal Nezu of UA High School. Principal Nezu would introduce himself, telling Izuku Midoriya that UA has actually paid for the mass majority of the medical bills that he has, and that they would love for him to actually try out for the UA entrance exam when his time would come. They would then tell him that it seems like he has a very special quirk, and his circumstances may not be the best, but they do wish that to see him once again when he is a little bit older. He would ask what's next and if he can have help or anything, but unfortunately Nezu would say that they're actually not allowed to do so at this moment. But if he continues to work hard and continues to read up on his studies and trains his quirk, at least to a small extent, then he could actually be able to do something. Now, with that said, there's someone else that would then come walking in, and it would be Bakugo and his mother. Now, this is where things begin to change massively, because Bakugo maybe or may have not been extremely good friends with Izuku, but a near-death experience does something to a friend's psyche, especially one like Bakugo, who has treated Izuku like garbage, and especially learning of the abuse that his mother put him through. Of course, he would be a lot nicer to Izuku, and his own mother would decide that they're going to take on the adoption of Izuku and make sure to bring him in as a Bakugo. Now, this is something that would make Izuku emotional, and Bakugo would even give him a hug, saying that he's glad he's okay, and he apologizes for everything that he did. He begins to tell him, though, that there's no guarantee that he'll be the nicest in the world, but he's going to make sure that he's a lot better. And that this whole incident made him realize how big or how much of a crappy person he's been to not only him, but to many other people as well. Now, this is massive character development for someone like Katsuki Bakugo, who has been basically built up and his ego has been inflated his entire life. So this is a good step in the right direction for Bakugo. Now, this is also perfect for Izuku, not having to go into an orphanage, not having to go into your traditional foster home, going home with the Bakugos, and actually staying there and going back to school, catching up on his work, and so on, and actually training with Katsuki Bakugo. Yes, training with Bakugo. Now, some time would pass, about 2.5, maybe 3 years. This would lead up to the UA entrance exam, but they would continue training together, working hard together, and they wouldn't have that much conflict, at least between each other. But one thing would lead to another, and Izuku would stumble across actually walking under that bridge once again. But this time around, Izuku's not alone. Izuku is walking with Bakugo, and the sludge villain would come out of the sewers, standing in front of them both, saying that he's going to take one of their bodies for good, so that he can get away from that giant freak. In which immediately they would both smirk, and Izuku would dash forward, immediately spiraling around the top and the bottom of the tunnel itself. Bakugo would go blasting forward, landing an explosion, but as this air would filter out, it would push the giant monster of a being backwards. As it continues to do that, as Izuku continues to run around over and over and over again on the walls and the ceiling and the floor, eventually another explosion would send the giant monster flying, spiraling out and splattering against the wall. They don't necessarily have the full-on strength to take out the opponents, but Izuku would continue to send these gusts of air just by using his running and also his arms, spinning it as fast as possible. He's not too well inclined with his quirk, but the fact that him and Bakugo are extremely intelligent, especially dealing with hero-like quirks, shoot, they'd be able to come up with some creative ways to utilize his quirk, Bakugo's quirk, and even both of them together. So they would both benefit each other extremely well. Now, this would lead to All Might showing his face and knocking the villain out in one blow, and them actually helping out clean up the sludge that is everywhere, but Izuku just speeds around extremely quickly, picking it all up and bottling it in a bottle. He would thank All Might would thank them, and then they would thank All Might and ask for some autographs and stuff like that. And they would ask if they could basically get some memorabilia from All Might or something like that, and also ask him a couple more questions. And then it comes down to one last thing, and they ask if somehow he could train them, in which All Might kind of says that he can't do that, and he apologizes, but if they try out for UA and go to the entrance exam and get in, he will be there as a teacher, so be ready. In which both of them would get excited, and as they turn around and then turn back, All Might has already jumped off as his form is going to deteriorate, so he had to leave as quick as possible. But both of them are extremely excited, and there's still months and months of waiting and training leading up to the UA entrance exam, so they still have plenty of time to work on their skills and also work on Izuku's control of his speed power. And Izuku would begin running up around the beach and so on, mostly at times that people aren't there. Yes, there is a little bit of an issue with the Bakugo family, because Izuku does consume a lot of food. So he does say that he will literally clean the house, he'll do all the chores, everything, so they don't even got to worry about it, and he'll just super speed all of it if they just feed him what he needs to be fed, in which, to be honest, isn't even a good deal on the part of the Bakugo family, because damn, that dude can eat a ton of food. But it is cool that they don't have to worry about the house. It's spotless all the time, and a bunch of the chores and all that, easy peasy. So it gives them a lot more time to do other things as well. And, you know, maybe pick up an extra job or two because they need to pay for the food for this crazy kid that eats like 10,000 calories a day because he runs so much. Now, the training is extremely fruitful for both of them. I will say Izuku's limit is so much higher than Bakugo's at this point, just because this where he's not only where he started, but where he could genuinely get to. But Izuku would kind of learn the ins and outs of his running and get to the point where he's running extremely fast, like extremely fast. Faster than most people could possibly even imagine, maybe even in the realm of 300, 400, 500 miles per hour. It's super, super fast speeds. And he just continues to run back and forth up and down the beach. And while watching this, Bakugo even says that he can go faster. He begins to shoot explosions to tell Izuku to amp it up even more, and Izuku would amp it up. He would begin to sprint back and forth at as fast as he possibly can, and he smiles as he does it. And as he plants his foot one more time and begins to actually run again, he would then look to his left as he sees this odd looking person. But then he realizes that's not an odd looking person, that's him. He freaks out and then stops as he tumbles and then slams into the water at the beach. And then he looks up toward where Bakugo is, and Bakugo's standing there with his arms up. What the hell happened, dude? He begins to kind of question Izuku, asking what he's doing, and that if he's doing the whole like passing out thing all over again. But Izuku would tell him no, that he doesn't know what just happened. He literally saw another version of himself, or saw him to his left. In which Bakugo says that's enough running for today, that he thinks he's lost a couple screws in his head. But Izuku's dead serious. He doesn't know what happened, but once he started cranking up the speed even more, it was this weird feeling, as if he sees someone right next to him, but he stopped. He stopped and stopped everything before something could finish, as if he could feel that he was about to do something, as he was about to break a wall of some sorts. But he stopped. The man disappeared that was next to him, the person that looked just like him, but wasn't looking just like him. He then realizes the person running next to him had a suit on. A suit. He then runs off and then comes back with a piece of paper and also like a bunch of like color pencils and stuff like that, and begins to draw exactly the way the suit looked, and he shows it to Bakugo. And Bakugo would say, that thing looks freaking awesome, but I mean, we don't have anything like that. I mean, of course, we get into UA, we will, but we don't have anything like that. But Izuku says that's the thing he saw. This suit is what he saw, but it wasn't him. He wasn't wearing the suit already. This other mirage version of him was. So maybe that suit is what he's going to wear in the future. In which immediately Bakugo shuts it down. You're telling me that you just saw into the damn future. In which Izuku looks at him and shrugs and says he's not sure, but it's the only thing that makes sense. Makes sense, I guess. They both would then kind of freak out about this and then say that they're just not going to talk about this anymore because they're getting headaches. But they decide that they're going to continue their training, their studies, and so on, because they're prepping for that UA entrance exam, and that is coming up very, very soon. Some more time would pass, and eventually the UA entrance exam would then begin. Izuku and Bakugo would approach the area for the entrance exam and would be extremely excited. A lot of the teachers are watching, and Nezu is included in this, and Nezu watches the cameras as Izuku, right beside Bakugo, actually walks in the doors. Now, Nezu is excited to see this because this is someone that he's been curious about for a while, and he's actually been watching and actually spectating a little bit of what he's been doing and training, and it's obvious that his quirk, or his powers in general, are something that they have never truly seen. He's faster than anybody they've ever seen, even faster than the Ida family. Yes, the Ida family, the ones that are known for their speed. No, but this kid is different. He is a totally different monster in terms of his powers, and Izuku would more or less just get ready for what is to come. in the so-called entrance exam. He would do his work and finish extremely quick, as always, because Izuku is very, very fast in doing anything he wants to do. So he'd finish, take a bit of a rest, and then get ready for the practical exam, which would be destroying a ton of robots. In which this is where things get extremely interesting, because Izuku begins to think to himself that he doesn't really have a way of necessarily destroying the robots. Maybe he can kind of push them over at fast speeds and they would destroy themselves. In which, in the early parts of the entrance exam, he actually tries this, and the lower point robots, they definitely get destroyed pretty easily by just him running over and pushing them over, and they get destroyed. But the other ones, the more high grade, or the high point ones, being that of like a 3-point robot, it is not that easy. He begins to think that he should try and vibrate his hand and maybe punch it, and as he does this, it does hurt him a little bit, but mostly because he doesn't have it down right. He begins to phase his hand and then kind of messes it up and kind of hurts his hand a little bit. But other than that, he's able to destroy these robots now using this phasing-like method, kind of phasing and breaking the robots apart entirely. He races around and does just this, and quickly he would realize that he has destroyed almost every single robot on the field. The speakers would come up and begin to say that the other students unfortunately don't have enough robots to actually be able to pass. This isn't something that they thought would occur, but they do ask Izuku Midoriya to step off the field and for the rest of the contestants to come back in about 6 hours so that they can get their chance at some of the other robots as well that they have predetermined. Now, Izuku would leave, but then be stopped by, well, Principal Nezu and also Aizawa. They would speak to him, asking a ton of questions about his powers, but let's be honest, even Izuku doesn't know how his powers exactly work, and doesn't know even really where he's got it from. Again, he's kind of foggy in terms of his memories. A lot of those memories with him being kind of strapped down and struck by lightning is massively fuzzy. But he begins to say that all he remembers is getting struck by lightning and waking up in a bed a long time after that. He's not sure what else. He's not sure what else happened, what occurred, or anything like that. He does know his mother unfortunately passed away, but he doesn't even know when that even happened. So it could have been when he was in a coma, could have been before, could have been after, whatever. He doesn't know. In which Aizawa would be definitely interested in this because it seems like the kid has gone through a lot, but he does seem to have insane potential. Aizawa would nod as he then begins to talk to Nezu on their own, and they walk back and they tell Izuku that he's been extremely impressive and that he's definitely going to pass, that there's no doubt about it, and they hope to see him extremely soon because they think the kid has immense potential. Izuku would smile and thank them, and he would say that, well, on top of that, he wants to get this in early as he hands over something to them, and it's actually the suit design he was talking about. He says that he deals with a lot of friction issues, and he burns through a ton of shoes, and yeah, it's been a bit of an issue, and his adopted parents don't really like that very much, in which they kind of laugh a little bit about that, that he burns through shoes so much, and they say that they'll handle it. They might even get him some regular sneakers that are just friction resistant, and maybe even some other clothes that are regularly friction resistant as well, so that they can basically make it so he's a little bit more comfortable when he just wants to run. And Izuku would be happy to hear this because, damn, he's tired of basically losing every single piece of clothing he ever has. I mean, it's pretty annoying, and he gets a little bit frustrated, especially because every time they train, he knows damn well his whole outfit's feeling to be burnt up and shredded entirely. Now, they would then leave, and Izuku would await the exit of Bakugo, and Bakugo would then say that he thought he did a great job, that an amazing job. He destroyed so many robots, but then Izuku says that he destroyed so many that they had to actually restart the test for the other students. Bakugo looks at him, and then looks away, and then looks back at him and calls him an idiot, as he says that he definitely got second place, and Izuku definitely got first, which pisses him off, but whatever. He would then walk out and they would head home, and there would be a good bit of time, maybe a couple weeks, before the first day of UA High School. Now, they would await letters, and finally when the letters would arrive, they would get a very pleasant surprise, because that pleasant surprise would be All Might himself. Yes, All Might himself. A picture of All Might, or a hologram of All Might, would begin to speak to both Izuku and Bakugo, at least separately, saying congratulations that they individually had got number 1 being that of Izuku and number 2 being that of Bakugo, and they did an amazing job. And All Might says that he's extremely surprised that he ran into the top 2 basically students that were coming in to UA, and he never realized how much of a blessing that truly was, and he was glad that he was able to talk to them before they even tried out to get into UA in the first place. Now, he would then explain they're both in Class 1A, so on and so forth, and he would say that he's going to be extremely excited to work with them both and hopes to see them very soon. Now, from here on out, they're both extremely excited and ready to go to UA immediately, but with a little bit of extra training, you know, on the side, running a little bit and so on, they would eventually have their first day of UA. But when Izuku would arrive, he would be brought to the office with Bakugo and be handed a bunch of shoes and a bunch of shirts, shorts, and stuff like that, and the lady at the front would actually say that they're all friction proof. And she tells them to have fun and have a good time at UA High School and wishes them both good luck. Izuku is extremely happy about this, beginning to put on, going into the bathroom and then putting on like some of the clothes and just getting ready. Now, the clothes aren't the nicest in the world, and Bakugo kind of laughs at him because they're not like amazing clothing, but still at the same time, they are friction proof, so that's all that frickin' matters, literally. He would then walk up to UA, and they would walk up to the door, and the door would be towering over them both. But then Izuku would stop. He would look at the door, but then he would look at Bakugo, and he would look out in the open. He would look out just toward the city. Bakugo would ask what the hell he's doing, and he would say he feels different somehow. He doesn't know what it is, but it feels different. Bakugo would then say once again, stop with the ominous BS. What's happening? In which Izuku would say that it feels like someone is watching them. Like, I don't know what it is, but it feels like there's someone watching. But just them. Bakugo would say that it's just first day jitters and push him inside the classroom, getting ready for the first day of UA High School and also their quirk assessment test. Of course, Aizawa would go through all of that, but then we would look off into the distance. As you can hear Aizawa speaking about the quirk assessment test, you then zoom into a nearby building and a suit that is white and yellow with a bolt that seems to be an odd looking shape of some sorts. Not your normal bolt, but looks like it's kind of facing the opposite direction, or maybe the reverse of a normal drawn lightning bolt, and they would be standing there. It's a slimmer body or slimmer shape, but this person is relatively short, maybe around 5'6", maybe to 5'8", and the person that is standing on that rooftop would then say that they'll be seeing Izuku Midoriya very, very soon. But as they say that, they would dash off as red and white lightning would trail behind them. Yes, red and white lightning trail behind them as they speed off, running in the distance. But Izuku was feeling something. Felt that something was off, as if there was something in his core, deep down inside, something felt off. It wasn't just your typical, just run-of-the-mill stalker looking from the distance. It felt as if something deep within his own body, his core, was just flat out different. Maybe it was his powers. Maybe it was his mentality. Maybe it was his mind. Maybe it was something just messing with him. but there's somebody that was doing something to mess him up. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know who it was. But for now, Izuku has a mission. And that mission is to excel at UA High School no matter what. And it's all going to start with the quirk assessment test that is going to be enforced by Shota Aizawa, other known as the Hero Eraserhead. But for now, that is the end of part 1 of What If Deku Was the Flash. We are finally in UA High School. The dream has been fulfilled for Izuku, and it's a dream he never thought he would be capable of. But luckily enough, he's had many people help him along the way, being that his new friend Bakugo, and also his new family, being that of the Bakugos. Now, with that said, we are dealing with Aizawa here, and Aizawa would quickly thrust them into the, well, quirk assessment, because the quirk assessment is a big thing, especially because he wants to see what Izuku is capable of. This is something he hasn't really seen much of, but he is very curious. I mean, he did know about Izuku and has heard about him and the type of things he's capable of, on top of actually seeing all the things that he's been capable of in terms of the original UA entrance exam. But he wants to see what type of quirk he truly has. And quickly, when they begin their quirk assessment, it's obvious that Izuku is extremely powerful. Yes, he's not the strongest, quote-unquote, but utilizing his speed, he's able to launch a baseball extremely far, launching it further than anyone except for, well, one person, being that of Ochaku Uraka. But that was before they even saw her throw the baseball in general. Now, they do go through a bit of an awkward situation because, well, Aizawa doesn't like the fact that everyone is so cheery and happy and stuff like that because, well, they got some serious stuff to do. He tells them that this is not fun and games, that this is something extremely serious and that they should be taking it extremely serious, and there is no fun and games in general. And it's pretty obvious what Aizawa means by this, and he tells them that whoever gets last place is going to go home forever. Yeah. They're going to send him home, and that's it. And there's no more being a hero and no more UA High School. Everybody is completely distraught at hearing this, but Izuku, on the other hand, not really distraught. Because at the end of the day, he knows he's going to be able to do this stuff, and he knows he'll be able to actually succeed in all of this. So why would he be afraid? Like, at all. So he begins to just accelerate as much as possible in all of the categories, and he begins to show how good he is at everything, from his ability to throw a baseball, from his agility to his speed. I mean, he is a natural at everything. And even when using maybe like a grip tester and stuff like that, that's easy as well because he just vibrates his hand to the point where it shows that the grip is actually pretty damn strong. Now, it's not like insanely strong, like it's still limited, but he excels at almost every single thing, getting some of the highest scores you can possibly get. And at the very end of it all, let's just say he has no chance at getting eliminated and no chance at actually being the one sent home because he gets the very top score, which would make Bakugo slightly jealous, but at the same time that is like his brother now, so he's not too mad about this. But on top of that, he kind of wanted to show what he was capable of, and that show that he was better than Izuku, even though he unfortunately was not able to do so. Now, there is someone else there currently, being that of Shoto Todoroki, that, well, he's not too fond over the idea that Izuku has done so well. I mean, he's actually kind of upset about it. I mean, he wanted to be the one that is up head and shoulders above everyone else, but he kind of just puts his feelings away and doesn't really speak much in general, so there's no point of talking about it, and he'll show what he's capable next time. Now, Izuku, Bakugo, and many others would finish up, and Aizawa would expel somebody, being that of Invisible Girl or Hagakure, and she would come back the very next day. Yeah, the very next day. It's just a ploy so that he can more or less get the best he possibly can out of them, so it doesn't really matter. So the next day that they're actually there in class, ready to do their hero versus villains training, who they actually don't know is running, or or what the training is that they don't actually know who's running it at the moment, they're kind of not surprised that Hagakure shows up a day after, and it's not that big of a deal. Aizawa even says, like, he's going to throw these tests in here and there, and he's sure that they're going to forget about it, so it doesn't even matter that he's bringing it up, which is kind of funny, but also probably true for a class like this. Now, the Heroes vs. Villains training, or the hero-based training, is then said that is not run by Aizawa, but actually run by, and then he comes in bursting through the door, that being the one and only All Might. All Might would bust through the door saying his signature, "I am here," and everybody would freak out. I mean, this is All Might we're talking about. This is super awesome. Heroes versus Villains training with All Might, that's amazing. They all get on their hero costumes, and Izuku would don his, well, speedster-like suit, and he would have, you know, the red coloring and all of the above with the lightning bolt on his chest and stuff like that. This suit is obviously friction-proof, so it allows him to not burn up his clothing entirely, and also it allows him to do many different things with his speed without getting hurt or, you know, somehow hurting himself in general. Now, he begins to wait for All Might to say who's up next and who's gonna go against him and who's his teammate and so on. But once it's announced what they're going to be doing, it's so easy for Izuku to see that this is gonna be one of his lighter days. I mean, yes, this is training, but once the training is revealed, it's something that isn't actually fair. It's actually revealed that they're going to be doing heroes versus villains, and they're going to have villains protecting a bomb that is within a building. But if you touch the bomb, well then, there you go. Then it's over and the heroes win. And the villains have to just last 5 minutes or capture the other heroes or subdue them in some sort of way. And when it's said that it's Ochako Uraraka and also, well, the Flash or Izuku Midoriya, it's pretty obvious who's going to win. Yes, I don't want to understate how good Bakugo is and how good maybe Tenya Ida could be, but at the same time, I mean, a speedster in this situation is absolutely unfair. A speedster is able to dash through every single room you could possibly imagine, and he races through, and since they don't have a special quirk or a special thing that could slow down Izuku or stop him from running in and out as he wishes, it's almost impossible to stop him from touching the bomb, and he would kind of just show up out of nowhere, speeding through the room and touching the bomb. He didn't even need the help from Ochako or anybody like that, because that's how easy it was for him. Now, if he had to go against someone like Todoroki, it might have been a little bit more challenging dealing with the ice, but that's also something that has been within his suit, dealing with heavy or extremely bad weather conditions or obstacles. That's something that his suit actually maintains and is going to help him overall as well. Now, this is a pretty basic thing that goes on. I mean, it was pretty damn easy for him to solidify himself as one of the top prospects in UA, and he continues to show that over and over again. Now, All Might would congratulate him and Ochako, but he would quickly realize that, well, that was extremely unfair. Like, his quirk or his powers are flat out perfect for that situation, and All Might kind of just lets him off and says, well, you know, you do with what you're dealt with kind of thing. Like, you can't really do much about it. So they watch the rest of the people go through, the whole class, of course, and they watch as Todoroki and other people do extremely well, or on the other hand, extremely bad, depending on who you are. Now, this would lead them to eventually having the end of that day and the end of that training session with All Might, in which everybody is a little bit disappointed because, I mean, it is All Might. They really enjoyed having a training session with the #1 hero, so of course you wouldn't want to just leave, right? You would want to actually continue having more knowledge and more training from a hero like All Might. But as always, good things must come to an end, and it did come to an end. So after that day, they do continue on with their training and also just regular school stuff. And one day coming up, actually extremely soon, they actually dealing with a different type of training. And this is a very important type of training, and that is rescue training. Rescue training is extremely important in the line of work that they're going to be doing as a hero, because being a hero isn't all about being strong, being fast, being smart. Being able to know when to rescue somebody and how to rescue somebody is extremely important, especially for someone like Izuku, who can move at hundreds of miles per hour. I mean, he's going to be an amazing rescue hero, but he still needs to understand how to properly approach rescuing as many people as possible, or basically not hurting people while he's rescuing them. This is important stuff and important things he needs to learn. But unfortunately, his class, being that of Class 1A, will not learn this day. And yes, it's because when they leave on that bus and they head off and everybody talks and everybody's talking about who the strongest in their class is, arguing over this quirk or that quirk, when they would arrive being greeted by Pro Hero 13, they would realize very quickly that this is not your normal situation. This is not your normal kind of rescue training. This right here, well, is something nobody would be expecting, and that's because villains would show their face and threaten many people there, including the students and many teachers as well. Now, I will say many of the students believed initially that, well, everything is kind of fake. Oh, it's not fake, it's not real, right? Like, I mean, why would it be real? This has to be some elaborate thing so that people can get good training in or something like that. But this, what they're doing now, is completely real. So when this guy with a hand on his face comes out of a portal and a giant monster-like creature does as well, it's made very apparent that this is a very serious situation, a very serious one. And before Izuku can actually jump into action, he'd be teleported away. He tries to dash out or tries to more or less run as fast as possible, but he would immediately show up in a pool of a giant lake, or a lake of some sorts that is in the rescue facility. He opens his eyes to see two fish-like creatures going to attack him. Luckily enough, Tsuyu, or Asui, comes in and actually helps him a lot, but he begins to twirl his arms as it begins to propel water and air all the way toward those creatures, and it makes some sort of a vacuum of kind of some sorts. They launch into the sky, and he begins to hover above. She is pretty shocked by this and says that they could probably leave now and get out of here by him doing that, but he says that he's definitely getting tired and they should try to head to the boat just for a brief second, and then he should be able to get them over by just propelling them. He lands on the boat with her and also Mineta, and they talk about the plan. The plan is more or less to propel them forward and try to clear the distance of this small lake of some sorts, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Luckily, the villains are actually not a problem. Izuku didn't realize this, but when spinning his arms, it created a vacuum and it literally sucked them down to the point where they are kind of trapped and they can't really move that well, and they're kind of in a bad spot. So at the moment, they're kind of incapacitated, and they don't even know that they could just straight up just leave. They could swim through this whole thing if they really wanted to, but of course, that's a little bit more dangerous than they probably like. Now, they head back to where the normal area is, and they see that Aizawa is actually fighting off a ton of villains. Izuku would then take off. He would take Mineta and also Asui and place them somewhat further away. Yeah, so like kind of down the road. Not fully toward the school, but places them there. He would race back and begin knocking out a ton of the villains that are trying to attack Aizawa. By a ton, I mean straight up would knock out almost every single one. Aizawa would then tell him that he needs to go, that he needs to run to UA as quick as possible and get there like ASAP and get some help, in which Izuku nods his head as he takes off. He begins to take off and he gets to Mineta and also Asui again, grabbing them and dragging them back to, well, UA. He's actually there pretty damn quick, and honestly, with a couple trips, he might actually be able to get out all the students, and he assumes that's what Aizawa is probably going to have him eventually do. But he goes there and he immediately speeds through different offices and tells everybody he possibly can that the USJ is under attack. He gets all the people round up and basically told what's going on and stuff, and he even grabs a couple pro heroes and says that if they're ready to fight, that he can get them there now, in which they say yes, of course. And a couple of them, obviously some of the teachers, would get raced over, and Izuku says that he can do the same for a couple more when he gets back in a second. But a couple of them would say that it might be best for him to try and grab as many students and get them out of there, but they're not so sure about if that's the best choice or course of action. But he would take off, bringing a couple more pro heroes, and with the added pro heroes, it definitely helps Aizawa not, completely kick the bucket or get extremely injured, even though the Nomu is a tough ask no matter what, even though you have the extra pro heroes. But it does kind of eliminate the threat of Shigaraki. Luckily enough, All Might would arrive, and having the extra pro heroes would help in the overall battle, and it would quickly turn the tides for the heroes. Izuku would continue racing back and forth, bringing more and more pro heroes, and eventually it gets to the point where the villains are flat out overwhelmed. The Nomu, Kurogiri, and Shigaraki are completely overwhelmed by the speed and also the extreme amount of, well, heroes that are arriving. Shigaraki is about to actually leave, telling Kurogiri that it's time for them to go, but a giant gust of wind would slam Kurogiri into the wall, and Bakugo himself would use an explosion on the metal body of Kurogiri, realizing what he's protecting. Quickly, they would actually subdue Shigaraki, and Shigaraki would be put in cuffs as quick as possible by Izuku. So they end up capturing Shigaraki and Kurogiri in this time, but before they could even realize it, someone else is there, and, well, it's not a good look, because the other person that is just arriving actually through a portal, well, sends chills down everyone's spine, because when he shows his face, or lack thereof, everybody freaks the hell out. More like one person, more specifically, and that's would be All Might. All Might would look at the person and see who he is, realizing that this is All For One coming through a portal from the ground. He would immediately try to attack All For One, but he would dodge easily and would be able to dodge through a portal and then out to another, actually putting portals underneath the Nomu, Kurogiri, and Shigaraki, making it so that they escape. He would then tell All Might that he'll be seeing him soon, and that it might even be sooner than he could possibly imagine. They would fall through the portals together, but it seems like the heroes still won the day, and have won the day considerably. And that's all with the help of one Izuku. Izuku has done quite a bit, and he gets pretty damn congratulated by everybody, including a lot of the teachers. I mean, he did some crazy things, and on top of that, he's shown how good his speed could possibly be for reinforcements and so much more on top of that. Most, if not all, the teachers realize that Izuku is probably one of the only people that is flat out hero ready, or at least field work ready for sure. Izuku definitely deserves and probably will get better treatment in terms of having more ways of actually affecting other people, or more opportunities that could also affect him in the long run. But even him, he's going to have to deal with some stuff coming up very soon, because what's normally kind of a cool and awesome moment with the UA Sports Festival, well, let's just say is going to be a lot different than what Izuku is imagining. Because the day of the UA Sports Festival, after, all of the time, or the little bit of a time off leading into the Sports Festival, is going to be a day that Izuku will remember forever. And it might sound ominous, and it probably is, because the day that he's going to remember is the day he's going to meet who is could be or is supposed to be his greatest villain ever. The UA Sports Festival would begin, and it would begin with a speech from Izuku. Izuku talks to the whole crowd, saying that he's excited to put on a show and show everybody what he's truly capable of. He continues to go on and on about his capabilities and also what he's going to be able to do today, and especially in front of the entirety of the crowd. He then says that everyone's going to put on a show and that his whole class is going to come out on top. He continues talking, but as he is, someone that is kind of unknown to everybody is standing basically at the top of this giant stadium. They are actually clenching their fists as Izuku is talking and continues to say the same phrase over and over again, saying that he does not deserve this, he does not deserve this. Over and over again, which is a creepy and scary thing, and quickly someone would realize, and security would realize, that this person is at the very top of the stadium. They would go up there, but as they arrive, the person is gone in a flash, no longer actually being there, and it would confuse and kind of scare everybody, because, I mean, where the hell did they go? Did they just vanish? Did they teleport? They have no idea. But they kind of shrug it off initially, but Izuku, standing at the podium still, would see somebody dash in front of him. Standing directly in front of Izuku is someone else. Standing directly in front of Izuku is a person in a suit, almost the inverse of him, but with a combination of yellow, white, and a reversed bolt that is staring at him. This person would begin speaking and would have vibration in their voice, telling him that he does not deserve what is coming and does not deserve what he actually is going to get. But this, as this person would then punch Izuku in the stomach, sending him flying, they then say that this is what they deserve. As quickly a fight breaks out and heroes begin to try and swarm and stop the somewhat reverse-like Flash or the reverse-like Izuku, but quickly it's obvious that only Izuku can keep up or catch up to this person. Izuku would chase after this person through the city, wondering who they are, but Izuku, luckily enough, is able to grab his suit and continues to chase the person as far as possible, who eventually would be named or deemed the Reverse Flash. Izuku would continue chasing, but the Reverse Flash would not give up at all, being faster than Izuku and seemingly a lot more motivated to make sure that Izuku feels what he's going to feel. Izuku would then get punched and sent into a car, and he would try to dodge, but it's obvious that this Reverse Flash is so much stronger and has a more grasp on, well, the Speed Force or whatever this is their speed, more than Izuku even does himself. Now, Izuku would continue trying to fight back, and some heroes would even converge, but it wouldn't matter. The Reverse Flash would be beating him senseless, and it seems like every time he tries to keep up or even tries to get away, he could do neither. He cannot keep up, he cannot escape, and the same thing keeps getting repeated, that he doesn't deserve it, that he doesn't deserve what he's going to get, in which Izuku is confused, saying and spurting out that he doesn't even know who this is. He doesn't even know that who the person is, and he begins to say that he was struck by lightning and that he was gifted these powers under false pretenses, under a tragedy. He was supposed to die. He was supposed to, and as he is about to say another thing, the Reverse Flash would throw lightning at him, shocking him through his body as he remembers almost every single thing that his mother did to him. And on top of that, why his mother even did this in the first place to him, strapping him down to a chair and forcing him to get struck by lightning. A memory that has been repressed for a little bit now, but a memory that is now spurting out at the worst time possible. Izuku would then stagger to his feet and say all of the things that are going through his head about his mother and about how he got his powers, but the Reverse Flash doesn't want to hear a single thing, saying that it doesn't matter how you got your powers, it is a matter of that you have them, and that he's the reason why that the Reverse Flash, or whoever this is the way they are. in which is a scary thing because Izuku says that he has no idea who they are, and then it would be remarked that it's because they haven't even met just yet, that they haven't met just yet, but they're going to meet very soon. Now, they would then beat the brakes off of Izuku, making it so that he basically lays there completely unconscious. Izuku would try and get up, but struggles and cannot even move an inch. Quickly, it's realized Izuku has officially and obviously lost this fight. But luckily enough, he's not dead, but his laying body unconscious or hurt extremely bad is left there by the Reverse Flash, and heroes would eventually converge on him, asking if he's okay. But the out-cold Izuku can't say a thing, as electricity would form around his body and would begin to burst, as white and yellow electricity would surround him and then dissipate at the same time. Izuku would feel that the speed within him is not gone or anything like that, but it's definitely unstable, or maybe something of that degree. But it's probably because he just got everything, or basically hit the piss beat out of him. So, I mean, what are you going to do when you get beat that badly? Now, that's beyond the point because he is semi-unconscious at this point. But they do bring him to a hospital and he's put out a commission for a good little bit. He misses a good chunk of what's going to occur, and they do send him work and stuff like that as he needs it, and he tries to do his work, and luckily enough, the speed or his speedster abilities allow him to do work extremely fast, so keeping up with all the work he needs to catch up on is pretty damn easy. And this does also allow him to make sure that his speed is all in check and not completely ruined by the occasion that occurred, you could call it. And Izuku would realize that it seems like his speed is a-okay. But he definitely does need to keep training because whoever that was faster than him, and he needs to be able to beat them if they are faster than him. But that's for another time. He shakes it off, continuing to finish his work, and then also continues to more or less deal with whatever he needs to deal with. Information would get to him though, and they would talk about some sort of internships. But unluckily, he's unable to actually participate very much. He does get a couple invitations from different heroes and stuff like that. I mean, he's a popular guy. But unfortunately, it's not something he's able to really do, especially in his condition. He's actually still recovering, and they basically just have him at UA, training and just preparing as much as possible. They talk about how they've never had a student that has more or less an arch nemesis, and they would talk about how they don't get why this person even hates him so much. Izuku says that it was an odd thing and everything's a little fuzzy, but they did say something about that they haven't even met yet, which he doesn't understand. It doesn't make sense. And, well, Aizawa would hear this and ask if he could possibly run fast enough to time travel, in which he would be kind of shocked to even hear this, and he says theoretically if he's faster, maybe, and there's probably a lot of things that would have to go into that, and maybe a support hero would be able to kind of figure that out a little bit more than he can. But quickly Aizawa would ask, how much faster is this so-called Reverse Flash? But then quickly Izuku would realize what he's saying. Aizawa is implying that the Reverse Flash is from the future. And this would shock Izuku, saying that's ridiculous. There's no way that he's from the future. In which that would terrify Izuku entirely, because that means that he needs to get a whole lot faster, way faster than he's ever been, and way faster than anyone ever will be. Now, Aizawa would then say, if he is from, or this person is from the future, then there must be something he does later on that affects them. And if time isn't as malleable as you think, maybe changing for the person in this timeline would affect another timeline. In which Izuku would shrug and say that he has no idea. I mean, how is he supposed to know that? I mean, okay, let's just say that he spills coffee on said person. How does he not spill coffee on said person in the future. I mean, he doesn't get it. He doesn't, not at all. And Izuku would kind of shake his head, and Aizawa would shake his head as well, saying that the kid needs to get faster, fast enough to stop this thing, so let's do that first and worry about some sort of after temporal thing later, in which Izuku says that they can worry about him getting faster now, and that must be probably a little bit, probably a better idea than trying to figure out some sort of future stopping thing. Aizawa nods and says that they're going to be working on some support items that could amp up his training, but also could amp up maybe his speed in general, and they'll figure it out, and they truly will, and he wants him to keep a kind of a low profile, at least for now. Well, it seems like Izuku has some massive expectations to live up to, and some massive things to deal with. Izuku Midoriya is still kind of subdued or in a hospital. He's taking some time to train, but also to fully recover, because that's a big thing that he's going to have to do. It seems like the damage he actually took was a lot worse than anyone possibly imagined, especially because they all know that Izuku does have a bit of a speed-like healing factor that makes major injuries seem like minor injuries. Now, he is not completely out of commission. Like, he's not like out cold and on a bed having to sleep off for days, but he's still kind of dealing with what occurred. I mean, he just dealt with a speedster beating the absolute hell out of him, and at the same time dealing with somebody he has no idea who they are. But of course, he continues his normal training regimen and also works with the support heroes to actually utilize some sort of speed-like enhancer. Some actually really genius support hero by the name of Mei Hatsume is currently working on this for Izuku, and they call it some sort of tachyon accelerator or tachyon, some sort of assistant mobile device on his chest, or is at least going to be on his chest when it's completely finished. It's supposed to boost his speed quite considerably and also make sure that he can actually stand up to this so-called reverse flash. Now, there isn't any guarantees. Let's say there's no guarantees that this reverse flash is going to be slower than Izuku with this tachyon sort of enhancer, but at the same time, it is going to help Izuku with training and also help him with just getting faster in general, which is a main thing he's going to have to do. Now, there are a couple things going on in terms of the final exams and stuff like that, but Izuku isn't really associated with those very much. Now, he is partially, and Aizawa does test him, but it's kind of a totally different, like, exam. He's tested in his abilities and his strengths, his weaknesses, and also how he can approach the fight with, well, this reverse flash. Now, this is what's really important right now, because Aizawa understands that this is beyond really what any of the other heroes could deal with. He knows that this person isn't utilizing your traditional quirk, or at least it's not something that they know of to a large extent. I mean, the assumption is that if Aizawa can somehow look at this person, they could cancel their speed out. But is that 100% true? Because, well, if Aizawa can even get a look at them, and that's a big if, what if there is no cancel out? They can't use that as a end-all be-all, so they need to make sure that Izuku is completely ready. And the best way to do that is have him continuously train at UA High School. Normally, the students would go off to a some sort of forest-type training place, but this time around, that's not the case at all. They believe that it's just not useful enough for him to go there. But unfortunately, this would actually be a detriment for the kids that end up going to the forest training camp. Because soon the forest training camp would get raided by a bunch of villains, and the one person that they're actually looking for, or, well, the main person they're looking for, being that of Izuku Midoriya, is actually not there. Shigaraki, Dabi, and many others of these villains showing up and absolutely wreaking havoc. I mean, this is a terrible thing. The difference here is that Izuku has nothing to do with it. I mean, he literally cannot do anything about it, actually not even knowing that it's currently happening. So eventually things would go completely awry, and luckily enough, some other heroes were actually instated within the forest training camp, because the fact that Izuku took on a brand new foe and someone that is absolutely terrifying in terms of having to deal with. Now, luckily enough, not many people are extremely hurt. There are some pretty bad mental or mental booms, you could call it, or mental torture going on, just because, I mean, people of Class 1A and many others have been dealing with quite a few scary events, which is definitely not fun for them, but still, they're able to get through it, and eventually they would all head back to UA. But when they get back, they make it very clear that no one is to say anything to Izuku. Act as if they didn't even come back, and act as if nothing happened. Because, well, his brother, or more or less a brother, that in Bakugo has been kidnapped. And they cannot allow Izuku to just run off and try to find him, especially with probably the anger that he's going to have for the fact that his brother is now kidnapped. And that's a big thing. They want to make sure that they do not allow that to happen. But of course, keeping secrets for that long is very difficult when you have the press, because the press begins to release statements, and Izuku would be dragged into it and eventually hear those statements, and everybody would hear about Bakugo, Katsuki Bakugo, being kidnapped. Izuku would immediately look at Aizawa and look at the other people, and they don't even know what to say. Aizawa activates his quirk, and Izuku still is able to run off, basically clarifying his own idea of stopping the Reverse Flash, not being able to because their quirks aren't necessarily what they think they are, or at least they're not necessarily quirks at all. Izuku would dash off and would begin looking for Bakugo. He's in his suit with a Tachyon enhanced suit, and he begins to just scour the entirety of Japan. He's looking for Bakugo as fast as possible, sprinting through the streets, every nook and cranny. He looks through every last bit of it. There's not a single spot he wants to miss, because if he misses a single spot, then his brother could die. But as he's running through the streets and eventually stumbles across an area that looks highly suspicious, he would stop and look through a window, and as he does, he sees Bakugo in a chair chained up. Now immediately he thinks to himself, what is the best course of action? But as he's about to more or less think about this, he feels a hand grab his shoulder, and he turns, getting thrown at a building. He would smash into the building, and the Reverse Flash would be there waiting for him, saying that he's not going to save another person when he couldn't even save them. Izuku would stand up and shout at the Reverse Flash, telling them that they need to basically shut their mouth, that he's here to save his brother, that he doesn't know what happened in the future. He doesn't know what happened way in the front of time, but he doesn't care. This is not his priority right now. That is his priority. And immediately the Reverse Flash would stop talking, standing still, not saying even a single word, but eventually would disappear and then reappear once again with Bakugo in one hand and a vibrating hand in the other, saying that if he wants to save his brother so badly, he's going to have to catch them. Immediately dashing off with Bakugo in one arm and not allowing Izuku to get close. But soon Izuku could feel the effects of not only the training but the Tachyon enhancement slowly but surely ramping up and also catching up to the Reverse Flash. Heroes would get wind of this as Bakugo is getting raced through the city and Izuku is fighting over his brother, actually getting him once in a while, kicking the Reverse Flash away, and sometimes even getting the upper hand. But it's never that easy. Izuku continues to try to track down the Reverse Flash, and with this whole, kind of rampage going on, All For One sees this as the best time to show face, and a fight between All For One and All Might would then go on, and many things would begin to hit the fan. Nomu's attacking, villains everywhere. The League of Villains trying to actually end this right here and right now. Many different things occur as Izuku chases down the Reverse Flash, trying to stop them from hurting or killing Bakugo. But eventually, Bakugo would actually get the upper hand, because Bakugo would be quote-unquote out cold, or at least acting that way. And when the Reverse Flash stops and tries to basically taunt Izuku, Bakugo would immediately shoot an explosion at them, just exploding them into a wall and actually tearing part of the suit. Izuku would immediately dash over to Bakugo, asking if he's okay, and he tells Izuku to shut up, that he's fine, because they have a bigger threat at hand right now. They look back at the Reverse Flash to see that part of the mask is actually torn, seeing that there is actually hair popping out of it, looking like it's kind of a longer hairstyle. They're not sure who this is, but as they turn, or as the Reverse Flash turns their head, it seems like it's actually a woman, but it's a woman with white hair and what seems to be a shaved down horn. They're not sure who this is, what this is, or who this person is, but once the mask is, or the person is slightly revealed, the person panics and begins to vibrate extremely quickly and dashes off, not fighting anymore. Izuku and Bakugo have no idea who this person is and no idea what they're doing here. Now, Izuku would question who they think this is, and I mean, this is a person that is more or less involving in their future, or at least his future, and Bakugo would kind of question it as well, saying that if basically this is someone that he doesn't get to save, can they fix it by saving them? I mean, it has to be a major event. He tells Izuku once again that it has to be an event that is truly massive for them to turn out like an evil speedster. I mean, what kind of thing would occur for something like that to happen? Now, as they're having this conversation, a fight with All For One and All Might is still on, and it's raging to its climax. It seems like Izuku begins to dash over with Bakugo and soon realizes that the League of Villains is actually helping All For One actually quite a bit. And this is making it so All Might is having a ton of struggles. Actually, so much so that he has an injured arm and might even lose it entirely, because Shigaraki is looking to actually disintegrate it as they speak. But quickly Izuku would dash over there, telling Bakugo to back him up as they dash over together, as he grabs Bakugo, runs over, and then lets him kind of go, fight on his own. But immediately would dash over, knocking out most of the villains and rounding them up. But also Bakugo would do the same, helping cut down the large group of League of Villains, or just the large group of villains in general. And Izuku would tie up a ton of the villains and begin to dash away with them. All For One isn't even able to react necessarily, seeing a chance to actually kill All Might, so he hesitates. And when he hesitates, Shigaraki and many others that are currently there trying to help All For One finish the job are taken away without even a blink of an eye. He immediately would try to react right after Izuku dashes away, running at insane speeds, but as he tries to, he gets nailed with a punch, and then All Might winds up his vintage United States of Smash, smashing him straight into the ground. All For One would stagger, and he's on the ground completely just nullified. He's looking in the distance and tries to make a portal for the villains that are getting taken away, but unfortunately he's unable to do so, thinking to himself right before he gets captured and put away that he really messed up, and that this other speedster has truly screwed him over. Because All For One may be able to predict a ton of things, more than you could possibly imagine, but he can never predict someone coming from the future and interrupting his plans. Now, All For One would be put in prison, including all of the League of Villains, and that includes Mr. Shigaraki himself and everyone else that is involved in this certain scenario. Now, Izuku is kind of in trouble. I mean, at the end of the day, so is Bakugo, and many of them are pretty in trouble for doing what they did. But we all know that there is some leniency for it just overall. But Izuku has shown that he is a good person and a great hero on multiple occasions. So he's still given the opportunity to kind of fix things in terms of, you know, just having to deal with things overall. But Aizawa does say that his punishment is to clean all the dorms that they're going to be actually utilizing. And luckily enough, Izuku has a super speed type of quirk, or a super speed ability, so he said it won't take too long, but there are tons and tons of dorms, in which Izuku is not happy with, but he does fly through all the rooms, cleaning them spotless, and it would take him maybe like, 20 minutes, but 20 minutes is quite a bit for Speedster time, because in Speedster time, he had to literally sit there and painstakingly clean every single dorm. To everyone else, it was so fast, but to him, wow, it was slow as hell. That's for sure. Now, after cleaning everything up and after all that is said and done, there is actually some very important news. And that's actually the introduction of work studies. Now, for starters, you have the big three, being that of Mirio, Tamaki, and also Nejire, who are there talking to Class 1A and everybody else that is attending. Now, they do have some conversations, but Tamaki is kind of socially awkward. Nejire gets off topic extremely fast, talking about Mina, her little horn-like things, and also Izuku himself, being that he is a speedster, and the whole supervillain thing that he's been dealing with. And eventually Mirio has to butt in and say that he'll have everybody here fight him. Now, he's not sure, or Izuku's not sure, what this is going to accomplish, but he just goes out with his class and gets ready to take on Mirio. But before they can actually do so, Izuku is pulled aside by Aizawa, telling him to sit out of this one, that this is not the fight that he wants. And Izuku is confused, but Aizawa says that if he fights, that it's not going to be necessarily fair, that he should really get a one-on-one with someone like Mirio. In which that is a pretty damn big compliment from someone like Aizawa, so he kind of just shrugs it off and nods, telling Aizawa that he understands. He watches as his entire class gets beat senseless by this guy that can phase in and out of the ground and feels metrically impossible to touch. But then after it's all said and done, Izuku asks for a turn against him. Aizawa would say that's no problem at all as long as it's one-on-one, and Izuku takes on Mirio 1 versus 1. Now, this is a fight that is insane, because Izuku's super speed actually allows him to close the distance and allows him to actually land multiple punches on Mirio. Now, Mirio tries to just utilize his own quirk, Permeation, to its fullest extent in terms of not allowing him to hit him, but trying to react to Izuku is no easy task. I mean, it's honestly a task that is basically impossible. So he tries to just stay permeated at least the entire time, and then as Izuku misses, he tries to follow up, but that's even impossible in itself. He's never fought someone like this, or at least not to this level of speed. It's as if Izuku is just way too good, or just way too overpowered. Now, Mirio would land a couple blows, but these couple hits that he does land would actually involve him taking a ton of blows himself, taking a ton of hits himself, so he can actually retaliate with one of his own. But quickly he would realize that Izuku not only is an incredible talent, but is someone that should definitely be put in a situation to actually be working with the highest level of work study, being that of Sir Night-Eye. And that's something he thinks about after the whole fight is said and done, and he's going to tell Sir Night-Eye the potential of this kid. And after the whole fight, he tells Izuku that he's going to put a good word in and hopefully get him a work study opportunity. He thanks him and says that if he can't get it done, it's okay, but he would love to work with alongside him and also Sir Night-Eye, someone who's worked so closely with All Might, in which that excites Izuku. But of course, Aizawa tells him that there are some other matters at hand, because at the end of the day, he does love to do superhero things when he's not allowed to do superhero things. So they need to all train for their provisional hero license exam, in which everyone's excited. And Izuku says that he's been training for this forever and continues to do so, in which Aizawa says that he knows and that he should be ready, and it's really the other kids that need to get whipped into shape, in which that's why all of them will be training with Izuku, and all of them will be dealing with his speed to a large degree. He tells Izuku that he's only allowed to use about 10 to 15% of his speed, but he's going to train with them constantly, every single one of them. And that's an added to his punishment. So he's going to have to basically help them all with their super moves and basically help them all train by getting beat. By getting beat to a small degree, because let's be honest, just because you're using 10-15% of your speed and you're extremely still fast, it doesn't mean you're not going to get hit. And if you have to take on like 30 different students or 30 different aspiring heroes, you're still going to take quite a bit of damage nonetheless. I mean, he may be talented, he may be extremely fast, but he is going to take damage nonetheless, and that's just a fact. Now, he would help everybody and get everyone prepared, and eventually they would go ahead and take on the provisional hero licensing exam, which is kind of an interesting one, and one that Izuku is kind of confused about. And only reason why he is confused about it is because one of them is actually involving basically throwing these red balls and tagging people with them and lighting up their kind of lights on their chest. It's as if it's laser tag, but not really laser tag. It's with throwing balls like dodgeball. He doesn't get it, but he begins to think that like he could literally just run around, tag 3 people and be done with it. But he thinks to himself that he's gonna try and help his teammates, and he's actually goes on and helps quite a bit of people in his class actually pass extremely fast. But then he would go to the other side of the area and immediately tag 3 people for himself and then walk to the waiting room, which is extremely an insane flex, because he straight up just shows that he's that much better than most of these people here. And frankly, that even includes someone like Inasa, because yes, Inasa is extremely powerful and extremely awesome and cool, but he's really not anything compared to Izuku, at least in terms of just raw power. And Aizawa would kind of laugh at Ms. Joke, not in this traditional sense of laughing, but in the sense of laughing at her, showing that Izuku is just levels above most of these kids, and also that he even has a couple other students that are pretty damn close, or at least pretty darn close in terms of being a very high level prospect for future heroes. Now, we all know the next portion of this. The next portion would be the rescue-like portion of this exam. And let's just say Izuku would make this thing super easy. Because if we're talking about setting up a camp, Izuku does it within seconds, or at least seconds on the view of everyone else. Now, he would then save a ton of people within seconds as well, and many of them would complain of minor nausea. But of course, this wouldn't go too heavily to his bad score, like, docking off points, because at the end of the day, minor nausea versus being completely safe, I mean, you got to weigh your kind of options there. And Izuku just dashes around, saving all the people he possibly can. And this would kind of cancel out all of the bad, quote-unquote, detriments that he would get. He would even make sure that Bakugo was doing the right thing all the time, because he knows that Bakugo's anger does get the best of him from time to time, and he's going to make sure that he keeps that, in check as much as possible. Now, this does lead to the very end of the provisional hero license exam, and we all know what happens toward the end of it, where we have Gang Orca actually approach and bring a ton of fake villains to take on the heroes that are currently there. Now, we do get a sequence of Todoroki and Inasa not necessarily working together the best, but luckily enough, Izuku is able to kind of chime in and kind of get them to work together, just not completely coherently. Now, they try to, like, you know, use their wind and their fire, and it's obviously not the best thing in the world, and it's borderline absolutely horrible, but they still are able to kind of work together when Izuku starts implementing his own wind funnel that funnels the fire and also Inasa's wind within a giant tornado, encapsulating basically all the villains, and more or less encapsulating all of the villains that are on Gang Orca's side. Even Gang Orca is having a ton of issues with this giant tornado that is currently making him extremely dehydrated. And also on top of that, you have Izuku just absolutely just laying damage on him and also the other villains as well. Now, this would lead to them finding the very end of the exam, and Izuku would feel that he did pretty well, and honestly the scores would say exactly that, because Izuku would not only pass but would actually get some of the highest scores really ever seen, or at least gotten close to, if not a perfect score. And everybody would be pretty impressed by this, but let's be honest, he has practically every advantage you could possibly think of, at least in this regard. He literally can super speed everyone out of there. He can set up extremely quick. He can get a ton of things basically done in a matter of seconds, if not at least minutes, and would be able to do a lot of things a lot better than most people just in design. Now, with all that said, he would finally get his provisional hero license, and he's just one step closer to becoming the hero he wants to be. But obviously, he thinks of some things, and that more specifically would be the fact that in the future, he does fail to save this one person. He doesn't know who they are, but he still knows that it's a female, or at least a girl, and he somehow fails to save her. So he's going to somehow have to try to figure out who they are and still try to save her, and also successfully save her in this world, or in this reality. And it's something that's been on his mind, and this is just one step closer to doing just that. And what he doesn't know is that joining Sir Night-Eye's agency is the very next step to doing that as well, because that girl will be in arm's reach sooner than you can possibly imagine. One day he would meet, or he would actually have a meeting with Sir Night-Eye, and they would have a conversation, and Sir Night-Eye would have a lot of respect for him, especially because he helped All Might and also helped save All Might overall. Now, on top of that, he respects his abilities, his backstory, what he's gone through, and everything that has gotten him to this point. Everything. Now, he does test him and wants to see what his speed truly is like, and when he does test him, not even Sir Night-Eye's foresight can actually predict and see the things that Izuku is going to do. That's how fast he is. He's able to kind of just overwhelm Sir Night-Eye. His physical body is just unable to keep up, and Izuku proves why he's so touted among almost every hero school, and every teacher out there. That's why he's touted in that such high direction, and so highly in general. Izuku is then accepted into Sir Night-Eye's agency, and is more or less told what's going to happen and what is happening overall, and that would be dealing with the Shiha Zaikai, someone that they've been dealing with for a while and still trying to find. But with the help of Izuku, he should be able to actually go through a ton of data and a ton of paperwork and a ton of evidence and all of these things, and it will be able to help them kind of evaluate where he could possibly be. On top of that, we know that him going on kind of these daily patrols will be good experience for Izuku as well. But what he doesn't know is that the data and the analyzing and the evidence, none of that's going to matter, because sometimes all it takes is to be at the right place at the right time, because when Mirio and Izuku go on their very first patrol together, there's someone that they run into, someone that is absolutely terrifying, and that would be Overhaul. But that's not the only person they run into, because the first person that runs into them is a little girl with a horn and with white hair, calling and desperately shaking, because she's terrified of the person that is to follow. Mirio would look up to see Overhaul, but also look back to see the girl. And, well, let's just say you can see it in Izuku's eyes that he now understands. He now sees it, and he now knows. This girl is the girl that has been racing, chasing, and also trying to kill him for the last couple years, or at least the last year. And this person was the person that he felt stalking him on the first day of UA. This is the Reverse Flash, but this right here is the girl, the little girl that she once was. But for now, we're going to end the story off here, or part 3 off here, and you'll have to know or see what happens next in part 4, well, in the next part, obviously. Izuku Midoriya, Mirio Togata are facing down Overhaul. Yes, the villain that they've been searching for months on end, they've stumbled across in a matter of coincidence. But in all reality, this was the exact time that Izuku and Mirio were truly going to face off with Overhaul. Now, Izuku looks at this young little girl by the name of Eri and questions to himself what he needs to do. Does he need to rush off? Does he need to save her? What does he need to do? Many things are going through his head. At the end of the day, he's been chased down by someone that is just like this little girl, someone that supposedly he made into this so-called villain. So what is he supposed to do? If he just runs her away and saves her that way, what does that do to the timeline? But of course, there are many things going through Izuku's head, and frankly enough, the timeline is not one of them. We all know that there are repercussions to every little thing we do, especially if it's changing something that is of the magnitude of someone else. Very similar to what's happening with Eri in the future. The fact that she comes back, the fact that she becomes this powerful speedster, and all of these things. But Izuku is just thinking about how he needs to save this little girl. Now, good is good and bad is bad, or at least that's what it feels like for the most part, but it's not that simple when dealing with time. And Mirio himself doesn't even know what's going on, but it's odd because Mirio would be guiding Izuku on, ironically enough, in the proper direction that he should have taken. Because Mirio would try to defuse the situation. Mirio would try to more or less get Overhaul to be calm, get Overhaul to relax, and then basically allow him to take Eri back, but eventually they'll go after her again because they need more information. They can't be out here and take a fight. But that's not what Izuku is thinking about. That is the furthest thing from what he truly is thinking about. What he's thinking about is how to save this little girl. But one false step, one false look, it seems like Overhaul realizes what Izuku wants to do, and he begins to attack them. Immediately and without hesitation, attacks both Mirio and Izuku, and it's obvious that he puts an emphasis on attacking Izuku because he knows that this kid could run off and disappear with Eri in a matter of seconds. He even clicks the side of his hip as if he's calling for some sort of reinforcements, which is something that is not good at all. And from the distance and from a building above, there is someone currently watching, that being of the Reverse Flash, currently watching everything go down. But there is this uneasy feeling within the Reverse Flash's stomach that she is currently watching the hero that she supposedly despised so much fight for the smaller life, or her smaller self's life entirely. And it feels as if that maybe, just maybe, she misjudged who he was and what he actually resembles as a hero. But does that really matter, at least right now? In my opinion, not really. But the fight doesn't care about my opinion at the moment, and Mirio and Izuku keep trying to take on Overhaul and restrict him. Izuku needs to be or Deku needs to be very careful to not get touched by Overhaul. There's a lot of things dealing with Overhaul's quirk that they don't understand, so making sure to not get touched is a very big thing. Mirio and his quirk is kind of perfect for this, because Mirio is basically able to make Overhaul miss on command, making him actually miss over and over again. And this would frustrate Overhaul, extremely in fact. Overhaul would get extremely frustrated to the point that he really wants others to come help him, and they're actually coming with something that many of them don't really have a ton of information on, just minor information, nothing major, and that would be quirk erasing bullets. Now, they would look to actually utilize this because they feel that since they are protecting and trying to basically keep Eri, that it seems as if they're going to kind of give away like this, you know, opening, you could say. And that's exactly what's going to occur, because Izuku would hear the bullets ring off and he would see something. He would see Mirio protecting Eri, about to take the bullets himself, but somebody would come out of nowhere, kicking Mirio off of Eri and moving out of the way. This person is a henchman of some sorts, but Mirio is unable to react because he was going to protect her just with his body, not even utilizing his quirk, and that's a very bad thing. Izuku would go sprinting to catch the bullets, not allowing the bullets to touch Eri, not knowing if it's quirk erasing or just something to actually kill her. But as he goes to reach and grab the bullets to cover them up, a kick to the side of his basically his rib cage sends him tumbling and crashing into the building next to him, and then he immediately looks up to see the Reverse Flash, seeing the older version of Eri kicking him off, as this Reverse Flash tells him that saving her this day right now would erase everything that she wanted for so long. All the reasons and all the power that she got from this moment, that he was going to take it all away. But Izuku's confused. Wasn't she mad that he wasn't there to save her? Wasn't she mad that he wasn't the hero that he could have been to make sure that she was safe? But Eri seems to be completely, the Reverse Flash Eri is completely out of it at this point. It says that the power she holds is the only thing that matters to her now. And that is something that she now understands, and is the exact reason why that her younger self can never be saved. Which is an absolutely scary thought, because Izuku thinks in his head, well, what was he supposed to do in the first place? And it kind of feels as if it doesn't matter the decision he made, the good, the bad, there is none. There is no decision that he could have made to save that little girl, at least the way that she wanted to be. It seems as if even beyond that, it doesn't seem as if Izuku's going to have any impact on Eri in the near future. And if he does, it's only going to screw up the timeline even more. But guess what? It seems as if Izuku's not thinking about that. He's just thinking about how to make it right with Eri. Now, it's an odd thing because he is talking about or thinking about the younger version of her. But of course, instead of chasing away the older version of Eri or the Reverse Flash, the Reverse Flash would run off, seemingly quaking the ground, and as in the distance, and as she's running off, a portal would open and she would jump right through, subsequently going into or back into the future. At least that's what Izuku is able to see and what he thinks. Now, Overhaul is completely in shock and completely out of it, being that he has seen an older version of Eri, and on top of that, a version of Eri now, and the younger one, being that she has her quirk erased, and that her quirk is completely gone now, and he no longer can get anything out of it. Izuku and Mirio would close the distance with Overhaul, not having to worry anymore, or at least not as much, defeating him very, very quickly and rounding up the henchmen that came to help him. And everything seems okay. Everything seems alright, as if things and decisions were made, and people have to suffer and people have to benefit, and it all goes both ways. But Izuku, still in the back of his head, is worried about one person, that being Eri. Now, it's an odd thing for him because yes, Overhaul has been defeated, and yes, Eri is safe, but she's kind of put out of commission for a good while. Now, Izuku does still work with Sir Night-Eye's agency, and also even works with obviously UA for the most part to train and still continue everything he's doing. They even have a class A versus class B training that is extremely beneficial for every single person there. But all the main villains and everybody that truly was a massive impact is for the most part put away in prison and dealt with in general. And the main person that Izuku has been dealing with this entire time, being that of the Reverse Flash, is basically gone. It's definitely an odd feeling, and something that Izuku has to kind of remedy just a little bit, because he's been dealing with this for just quite a bit now. I mean, at the end of the day, he's not a full-fledged hero necessarily, but he has been dealing with super villain type motives, and it's been a bit of a struggle. But luckily, throughout this time, he benefits from the support of someone like Mei Hatsume and the training he gets from UA, and a lot of the things that would just kind of progress in their student era would just happen normally, and nothing really super eventful would even occur. Yes, you have kind of like the Meta Liberation Army, or the Front, that they may end up having to deal with, and I could see them actually facing off with them maybe in the near future, but they were kind of off on their own for the most part, and probably would be kind of just condemned by themselves for a while. But the main thing is Izuku still thinks about the one person that has practically ruined so much of his, or the beginning of his, hero life. That being the Reverse Flash, but of course, Eri is still a child. I mean, she doesn't know anything, and that was of adult, or basically an adult version of Eri that came back and tried to practically kill Izuku, and that's not something he's going to hold against the younger version, but still wants to try and make peace with it. And the thing is, well, that would end up being the worst idea he could possibly do, and it's a scary, scary thing when you don't understand the effects of time, because Izuku begins to actually take visits of and meet Eri, begins to speak with her, begins to make sure that she's okay, explain what happened, explain what occurred, and explain that she's going to be a better person. It's going to take a while, but she's going to be a good person and a great person after all this is said and done. That the trauma and all that does not define her, but she can use it to fuel herself in the near future. And this would progress all the way until Izuku becomes a hero. Izuku, the pedestal, the Flash, and this still leads to Eri becoming, well, someone that looks up to Izuku. And soon, at a young age, she would adopt powers like a speedster. But the combination of the quirk erasing bullet and also her time or rewind like quirk is what actually gives her speed powers, or her connection with some sort of different version of the speed force. But this is what's scary, because Izuku begins to help this version of Eri, training her, molding her and helping her become the hero she wants to be. And Izuku continues his path as a hero himself, stopping crime, helping people, stopping calamity, and so on. But the thing is he doesn't understand that the calamity that he will create on his own will be more than anybody could possibly imagine. Because soon, the people begin to feel the effects of what Izuku decided to do. Well, and those effects were all stemmed from the way he treated Eri in the past, or in a different past, or basically in a different timeline, in a way that or in a different timeline, he basically didn't save Eri the way he did this time around. He didn't know about Eri nowhere near as much as he would have in this version of the time. And this version of the time, now Eri's realizing how good of a hero Izuku is and how much he's done to protect her. So there's no point in her running back in time to do anything. Now this begins to actually fragment the timeline entirely, and Izuku feels the calamity and the planet shaking in its entirety. Many heroes try to stop it, but the knowledge of what's going on is very, very little. But Sir Night-Eye begins to tell Izuku that there's only one thing he sees, and it all ends with Izuku running. And he looks at him and he tells him that that's what's going to happen, that he's going to have to run to stop this calamity, and he's going to have to hit speeds that he has never hit in his entire life. And he's not sure what happens outside of that, but it seems as if that path is all up to Izuku, something that he can't foresee and something that his foresight can't even look past. All he sees for Izuku in the coming day is he'll be running faster than you could possibly imagine, and then everything goes dark. Everything for Sir Night-Eye through the eyes of Izuku goes dark. Not dark in terms of the way of there's nothing there, but dark in the way of there's nothing he can truly see. Nothing that is there to be seen by the powers that were given to him. Now, it seems as if Izuku has the powers of a god, but it seems like when you play God and try to actually help others that normally you would have never helped in the first place, or you wouldn't have had the effect you would have in the first place, things begin to spiral out of control faster than you could imagine. Sir Night-Eye would look at Izuku and tell him to run. To run, Deku, run. Deku would then chase after nothingness. He would begin to accelerate as if he's chasing something that doesn't exist, running as fast as possible, hoping and trying to connect to the speed force that struck him that day, trying to find what he needs. And eventually he would get enough speed, enough power, and enough ability to open up what seems to be some sort of wormhole. And as he enters, everything goes black. And then a white light would begin to overwhelm the entirety of everything. And Sir Night-Eye, his foresight with Izuku might have been all black, but it seems as if when the light or the white light begins to push forward toward them, it's the light of a giant reset, a giant stopping point, and a giant ending for the entirety of this world. It's something they couldn't have foreseen and something they couldn't have expected, but as they watch the white light consume them, it's as if they never existed in the first place. And all is left is the speedster, Izuku Midoriya, running through time, trying to clean the slate, trying to create a new world that he hopes can truly be like the last one. This begins to mentally mess up Izuku as he's chasing through the darkness, as he's trying to find his way to the light itself, he doesn't know what to even think. His mind is completely gone. His mind is completely blank, and he can't even think about what's happening. He just left an entire world in ruins, so much so that they don't even exist. His parents, his mother, his brother, Bakugo, and so many others, they're gone, as if they never existed. And soon Izuku would begin to lose the memories of them as well, especially when he would enter his brand new world, crashing through the streets of a brand new city, a city that is unknown to him. Izuku Midoriya has now wiped the slate clean and has now entered a brand new place, somewhere very far from home.